So here we are about 50 days out from this election. Are you frustrated at this point that you're still not getting full Republican support? We heard President George H.W. Bush say he's going to vote for Hillary.
Well, he didn't say that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look, I fought his son very hard. It was a very tough battle.
You've heard a lot of people describing you as they've been introducing you.
Oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Well, but a lot of them talk about how you're humble, you're a nice guy. They don't describe you as an attack dog, but often that's what the vice presidential candidate's role is on the campaign trail. Will we see a not so nice Kane on the campaign trail?
I think you always do your best work if you make it true to yourself. So, you know, different people do it differently.
Eric and his siblings and his dad, they're all fantastic people and really easy to talk to.
So what was it like the first time you met Donald Trump?
Well, in typical Eric, and maybe it's just a guy thing, fashion, I got no heads up that I was meeting his dad at all.
As a Christian conservative yourself, how do you square yourself with your running mate when these issues seem to keep coming up?
Well, Donald Trump has made it clear that he categorically denies those allegations that.
But his family knows another side of him. Cooper's daughters joined our conversation to tell us a little bit more about their dad and talk about how it's difficult to go through a campaign season when so much negative is being said about someone you love.
I went to a fundraiser this past week that was in Chapel Hill, and hearing him speak, I got like a little choked up because it's still really amazing to see him do what he's doing.
Sometimes you wish your dad was an accountant, but my dad always taught us that you need to give back to your community and taught us the importance of public service.
And I was very fortunate.
McCrory has a brother and two sisters. He says to this day they remain very close. And as his siblings' families have grown, he and his wife Ann have overcome their own hardship and extended their family in their own way.
My wife and I couldn't have children. And it had a big impact in our life growing up. I mean, being married, and I think that's one reason I got into public service, because I don't know if I would have gotten public service and put children through this. So, but we mentored 3 or 4 kids in Charlotte. I still stay in touch with 3 of the 4 kids about every week. Was in touch with one of them yesterday who had car trouble, and he has now 4 kids. And we love the kids we mentored. And we don't talk about it much, but I'm very proud of doing that.
So these two candidates went back and forth on the issues for this entire hour-long debate, with the only time that it really got personal is when Senator Burr said that he was offended by one of the attack lines used by the Ross campaign about his family's wealth.
At her final stop on this tour. Loretta, are people excited or just tired?
I would say it's a mix of both, but probably more excitement. And we did want to hear what voters had to say. We've really been crisscrossing the state today, going to people's hometowns, talking to them there to see what their thoughts are on election eve. The cooks were busy Monday morning at Jimbo's Breakfast and Lunch House in Wilmington. This diner has been a staple in the community since 1977, filling up hungry college students, tourists, and Wilmington residents. This year, it's also serving up breakfast for coastal voters.
From both ends of it, it just seems a little unusual, a little different than it has been in the past for whatever reason.
I told my congregation yesterday we just need to breathe. So it really has been a long election cycle, and it really has been very divisive, so we're just praying for things to work out the way they need to.
I voted on Saturday.
What was your experience with early voting?
It was great. Really useful to be able to come in, get my voting done on a weekend when I'm actually being able to be home and actually take advantage of it. It was great.
After kicking the morning off in Wilmington, we hit the road to head to Lumberton, a beautiful fall morning in North Carolina. But things were very different in this area just a few weeks ago.
When the rain stopped on Sunday evening, I'm thinking like elections in a few weeks. This office was flooded. The next day, my director, myself, was here to open up the doors, try to get some water out, check on our equipment. Thank goodness there was no issues there.
These are here 200 steps.
Okay. For voters here in Robeson County, they say while recovery in their community is a top concern, they're also concerned with making sure they participate in this critical election season.
We have had a good turnout in early voting, though, which is
you know, almost surprising considering the fact that so many people are devastated with this storm.
Our barnstorm across North Carolina brought us from Lumberton westward. It's the lunchtime rush, so we decided to stop by Spiro's in Monroe to see what the folks in Union County are thinking about the swing state status and if it's changed the way they've looked at this election season. What have your thoughts been about this election season? It feels like a different type of election season.
I think it's different than probably anything we've ever seen in our country's history, and I certainly hope we don't see a lot of repetition in this type of election, but I think it's critical that people get out and vote.
It has been negative to a sense, but I think that's indicative of just the American people. They're fed up with what's going on. They're fed up with just politics as usual. And it's kind of a pitchfork mentality. People are tired and they're ready to see change, and I think change is coming.
The main strip in downtown Asheboro is bookended by the political party headquarters.
How are you?
And as the clock winds down on campaign season, they both say they're feeling good heading into the final hours. There is a real taste for craft beer in North Carolina.
At least 90 cents of every dollar that we collect when we sell a keg of beer gets pumped right back into the local economy.
But for some brewers, they say things are about to become bitter.
This will be our last year of growth if they don't change this misguided law.
State law says that brewers can make up to 25,000 barrels of beer each year and sell and distribute it on their own. But once that threshold is crossed, a distributor must take over the sales.
They take about 25% off the top. So the day I go over 25,000 barrels, my revenue and margin will shrink by 25%.
Brewers say this will cost them in more ways than one.
I'll have to lay off 15 people. So we're just not going to do that. So we will stay at 24,999 as long as it takes until we get this law changed.
What we want is fairness and equity, okay? And the laws need to be equitable to everybody, both large and small.
It looks like a long list.
It's terrible. If you saw this, it's basically they vandalized cars, this group of teenagers, including my son, and each event is treated as a separate offense.
Justin, who is mentally challenged, was part of a group of teens who vandalized cars. He was 16 at the time, but charged as an adult with felony larceny and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges. Is there something adult Justin would tell that 16-year-old Justin about that day?
Not to do it.
Big mistake.
Yes. I would tell anybody who's 16 or 17 that your record will always stick with you.
That's because North Carolina now stands as the only state where 16 and 17-year-olds are automatically tried as adults. That means no matter the offense, if you are 16 or 17 and put into the criminal justice system, it goes on your record and stays there.
Over 90% of our parents think the law is already 18 for adult jurisdiction. Well, to that 90% of the parents, I would say, I'm sorry, it's actually 16 right now for adult jurisdiction.
Senior political reporter Loretta Boniti joins us. We used that word a lot last week, and it's going to be happening a lot this week.
A lot of folks have been talking about it with the Republican Party because they had so many candidates in their primary process that how were they going to all be able to come together? Democrats essentially had two candidates in this process, but it seems as though it's going to be just as difficult for them to find unity. Earlier this month, the rivals in the Democratic race for president stood side by side with the second-place finisher Bernie Sanders endorsing the presumptive nominee Hillary Clinton.
I intend to do everything I can to make certain she will be the next president of the United States.
But as the Democratic National Convention is set to kick off in Philadelphia on Monday, there are still some concerns by those who support Sanders.
The Progressive Democrats of America have no intention of standing down. At this point, we brought Bernie Sanders to this party, so to speak, and we intend to be there.
Political observers say this continued discontent does not surprise them.
In some senses, the division in the Republican Party nomination got so much attention that it almost tended to overshadow the very important divisions that we saw in the Democratic primary campaign.
Divisions were heightened a couple of days ago when WikiLeaks released thousands of emails from the Democratic National Committee, which appear to conspire against Sanders. One email from the DNC trying to get the issue of religion addressed by reporters. The fallout from this includes DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz now stepping aside from the convention, not participating at all.
I mean, it is an outrage, and it's sad,
that you would have people in important positions in the DNC trying to undermine my campaign.
Then there is the issue of vice presidential pick Tim Kaine, a moderate Democrat that Sanders supporters say is a slap in the face, and they may take the issue on during the convention.
There are very serious discussions going on about a challenge on the floor to the vice presidential pick.
Longtime Democratic strategists say Sanders supporters should be commended for their passion, but careful with how hard they push at the convention.
There's always this element in the Democratic Party that wants to go farther and push harder. And sometimes they push too far and we get too far out of the mainstream and we lose.
So these progressive Democrats and some of these Sanders delegates are saying that even if they don't put another vice presidential candidate into the mix here tomorrow, that there's also a possibility that they'll have protests on the floor.
I think we saw today the unity building all day long because so many of the Republicans were upset about what Ted Cruz did and that he didn't give that endorsement. It actually almost served to unify the party a little bit more. And then tonight when Donald Trump came out, I mean, we've been at these conventions before. The folks that are in this room, they support him. They're excited about this. And yeah, I think that this core group here is ready to move forward towards November.
It's hard to put into words what's going on around here. These people are also very excited. I thought it's really interesting that so much of the speech was about security and so little about the economy. They must believe that's where they're going to win this fall.
I think the security issue had to be touched on. We've had so much division in the country over the last couple of weeks with the shootings, especially with police officers. This is something that's on the minds of Americans right now, and he wanted to take the lead on it. We know. So boring, not necessarily, not if you sit there and just have a conversation with him. He's had a fascinating life, but boring as far as not necessarily having any really exciting things to talk about him that could be scandalous, perhaps.
So for those and your former colleagues that covered him, it's not a major surprise that he's on the stage tonight as the vice presidential nominee.
I don't think so. This man has been a hard worker and he has worked his way up. He went from being a mayor to being governor to being the junior senator from the state of Virginia. He's done well while he's been in the Senate. He's been attached to several big bills.
Time Warner Cable News senior political reporter Loretta Boniti is at the state capitol in downtown Raleigh with more on this latest fallout. Loretta.
Well, this is the latest blowback for the state of North Carolina in what's getting to be a long list of problems that have happened since North Carolina signed House Bill 2 into law back in March. But supporters and opponents don't seem to be swayed from their stances as to whether or not the state needs this so-called bathroom bill.
We all know how much North Carolinians like their college basketball, but now folks in the Tobacco Road will have to hit the road to see any tournament action.
It's extortion, and it's shameful extortion.
But the NCAA announced Monday it's pulling championship games from North Carolina, including basketball tournament games, in response to House Bill 2.
I'm not frustrated. I think it's politics. This is kind of the way politics works. You know, if it wasn't this, it would be another issue. So,
Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest says he stands behind House Bill 2, saying he believes North Carolina is getting unfairly targeted for a law that is aimed at safety. Opponents of the law say North Carolina brought the backlash on itself.
Not any southern state, not any Midwestern state, nowhere in this country has a bill that directly targets the LGBT community for discrimination and refuses to allow municipalities like Charlotte or Greensboro or Raleigh to become welcoming places.
We ought to have a special session to fix this issue, to stop the economic hemorrhaging.
Senator Dan Blue says he's ready if Republican leaders are ready to throw in the towel on House Bill 2. He says he wants a special session to repeal the law, which he says was purely created for political reasons.
When you enact legislation that has no enforcement mechanism in it, none, has no punishment if you violate it, then it has no other purpose than to stir up the base. And that's how they got into this, thinking that it was going to be to their benefit to pick out a group.
So the governor has responded to this in a statement saying, quote, the issue of redefining